Okay, everyone, I guess we can get started here. I think I probably know most of you that are on this call today, but anyway, I'm Bill Rapisi, President and CEO of Lymphatic Education and Research Network. And we are here because we are at a very momentous stage of our seeking further research funds for lymphatic diseases. I mean, there's been incredible change that's been going on. But the key thing here is only you can make it happen. I mean, LE&RN can do what it can to tee up the ball, but really it's up to the community at large to really hit that down the fairway, and that's why we're here today. You already know LE&RN's mission is to fight lymphatic diseases such as lymphedema, lipedema, lymphatic malformations through education, research, and advocacy. But today, we're focusing on the agenda of finding new treatments and cures. And there's only one way to do this, and that's through research. And who has the funds for research? Government. So today we are focused on this, establishing a National Lymphatic Commission to study the need for lymphatic research throughout all of NIH. And why is that? Is because right now lymphatic research is spread all throughout the many institutes of NIH. However, the next speaker will tell you why it is so important that we actually have a commission to coordinate all that, because our message is getting lost in the mix at this point. Case in point, NIH is only spending about $20 million annually on lymphatic disease research, and only about $5 million of that is focused on lymphedema. We definitely want to see that minimally quadrupled. But to give you an example, we came up with treatments for the AIDS epidemic because they spent $3 billion a year on AIDS research for over 25 years. So we have a long way to go, but this is where that begins. Also, many of you already know the Department of Defense has a $350 million a year medical research budget. But to be one of the diseases that people can submit research for, you have to be on a list of those diseases that Congress has said is appropriate for the DoD to accept proposals. So we're fighting for that as well. So lymphatic diseases is included in the Department of Defense. It's called the Peer Review Medical Review Program. As Representative Rosa DeLaura told Kathy Bates and myself and the group that met with her, there are many well-meaning people in Congress, but change requires outside pressure. And you are the outside pressure. Change will only happen with activism by the community. And this means individuals and organizations. So I welcome today Dr. Catherine Seo, Executive Director of the Lipedema Project, who is promoting this advocacy with her members, given that lipedema is also a lymphatic disease and we need this disease research. So thanks again for joining us and committing yourself to contact your national legislators next week. We will be providing you a link during this webinar so that you can let us know who you are contacting and any feedback that you received from your legislator. This is important so we can follow up with them after your calls and after your emails. And finally, I'd like to thank those who really contributed so much to this activity. First of all, those that contributed to the book. I hope all of you have seen An American Tragedy, Neglected Lymphatic Diseases. Everyone in Congress is receiving a copy of this book that has over 200 stories from those affected by lymphatic diseases in it. And our thanks to those who allowed their photos to be taken for the video, part of our campaign, John Noltner, the photographer, Lady Gaga, who let us use her music, Michael Minichiello, who designed the book and the video slides, Steve Palmer, who created the video, and Laura Farrell, who has been our point person directing this National Action Week campaign. Again, many thanks to all of you. And now I'd like to turn the meeting over to our legislative staff in Washington, D.C. They have designed our strategy and guided it every step of the way, including our many calls to Congress, which actually just took away my screen there, Phil. But in any case, I'd like to welcome Fu Guglas, who's with the Health and Medicine Council of Washington, and he will begin our training session. Phil, it's all yours. And for those of you who have questions, there's a Q&A box. You can leave your questions and there'll be a Q&A after the presentation. Phil, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us this afternoon. As Bill mentioned, my name is Phil Goglis. I work here in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the Lymphatic Education and Research Network. It is truly an honor to be with all of you today and preparing you for our National Action Week. So first, I want to thank you all for participating. For those of you who have in the past, thank you for continuing your participation. For those of you who are joining us for the first time and doing advocacy for the first time, thank you and welcome. Sharing your personal story is a big deal for legislators here in Washington, D.C. You help them understand why lymphedema, lipedema, lymphatic malformation, and other lymphatic diseases by educating them. A lot of the members here on Capitol Hill, as Bill mentioned, are well-intended, but a lot of them don't know all there is to know about the many issues that they must deal with on a daily basis. By participating in our National Action Week, you are advocating for yourself, but also for the entire community who's not able to participate or share their story. So just want to go over a quick review on what we're going to discuss today. First, we're going to do a little schoolhouse rock, how Congress works. We're going to review how to contact your legislators. We'll discuss a quick review of our legislative issues. As Bill mentioned, we're focusing on both the National Commission as well as inclusion of lymphatic diseases in the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed medical research program. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. The one housekeeping item I have is we do, as Bill mentioned, have the Q&A box for folks to submit their questions. We just ask that you keep your questions relevant to our National Action Week and the topics we're going to go over today. So first, a quick review of Civics 101. You have three branches of government: the executive branch, which is the administration; the judicial branch, which are the courts; and then you have the legislative branch, which is Congress. And the reason why we mainly focus on our work with Congress and the legislative branch is because of the authority that they possess. Congress has the power of the purse. They decide how much each federal agency is funded every year, how much money NIH receives. They also create specific policies, and they have oversight over federal agencies. So because of this, Congress is able to directly fund NIH as well as directing them to focus spending that money on specific areas, and we'll get into more of that in a little bit. Now, who comprises Congress? You have the Senate, which each state has 2 senators, so it doesn't matter if you're a high population state like California or a small population state like Delaware. Each state has 2 senators, so we have 100 senators in total. Each senator is elected to a 6-year term. So this current November, we have a third of the Senate who is up for re-election. The whole Senate, it does not run at the same time, as opposed to the House of Representatives, where you have an individual representative per district, and that is based off of population. So a state like California has far more members of the House of Representatives than a smaller state like Delaware. There are 435 members in total. That number does not change every 10 years. As a result of the census, new congressional lines are drawn. So different states, depending on their increase or decrease in population, will either add more seats or lose certain seats compared to other states. And as opposed to the Senate, where you only have 1/3 up for election at a time, this year, all 435 seats in the House of Representatives are up for election. Now, key committees that we work with on the Senate side, you have the Appropriations Committee. That is a committee that decides how much each federal agency is funded at every year. They decide what NIH receives, what the Department of Defense receives, and every other federal agency. You also have the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. Appropriately, it's the HELP Committee. That committee focuses on healthcare policy. They have oversight over NIH and other specific health-related programs as well. You then have the Finance Committee, which oversees Medicare, Medicaid, and a lot of tax issues. They also have a very important role in health policy in terms of taxes and other decisions. On the House side, you also have the Appropriations Committee, which decides how much money each federal agency receives. You have the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is a complement to the HELP Committee. The Energy and Commerce Committee also has oversight of NIH and creates specific health-related policies. And then you have the Ways and Means Committee, which is the complement to the Finance Committee. They focus on tax issues as well as Medicare and Medicaid issues. So that's Bill there, not our bill, but Bill. And how a bill becomes a law is it first must pass the House and the Senate and then be adopted by signed into law by the administration, which is the president. And the process for doing that not only applies to annual bills or bills in general, but they also apply to must-pass bills, such as the appropriation bills that must be passed every year. I'm sure folks may have heard about different fiscal years, and I know that over the past few years, there has been a government shutdown, and there's been a lot of focus on federal funding. Each year, Congress must approve appropriations for the federal government to be open and operate. And that happens whether there are 1,000 bills that are introduced or one bill. Those are things that they must do. But in anything that legislators consider, vote on, decide, the one constant is they consider feedback from their constituents on what to support as well as what to prioritize. And you'll see a little bit later how this is critically important to us. A quick review of some of the federal healthcare agencies that we work with. Excuse me. Of course, we work with the National Institutes of Health. They are the premier research organization in our country. A lot of the funding that Bill spoke about earlier is directed to NIH. We are very much focused on the working with NIH because that's where our National Commission would be created, and we would have a more robust portfolio on research. We also engage with the Food and Drug Administration, who approves drugs as well as some other specific oversight. You have the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, who decides coverage on certain issues. And then you have the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which focuses on public health and awareness. Now, what do advocates do? I know a lot of folks may be joining us today and, almost 10 slides in, it feels like you're drinking out of a fire hose and all this is kind of coming at you. What's critical and what's most important is that as an advocate, you share your story. You are the ones who are experts in your story, in your journey, and what your experience has been. And you use all of that to educate your senators and representatives about why it's important that they support our priorities. You use your story to raise awareness. You make connections with your office. The reason why we've had some success over the past few years is because of the relationships that we have developed with key members of Congress, where we've had folks from our community really educating Congress about what their story is, what their journey has been, and why it's important that Congress support our priorities. You ask for specific actions on key issues, and you work together with others, creating a large grassroots network, which increases the number of members who are requesting for support of our priorities. And the more members do that, the more likely we will be successful. Now, again, a critical mass of support. It's great if we have a lot of activity in a state such as New York or California, but what we really want is to have representation from all across the country. We want as many members as the Senate and as the House as possible, understanding and knowing about the needs of our community and really stepping up and advocating for us. So as an individual, you work to influence your individual member and get them to agree to support us. But you do that as part of this larger network that really does affect change. Again, most importantly is be prepared to tell your story. Everybody, and we'll go over this in a few slides, but everybody will have access to materials to review. The most important thing that we ask you to do is to share your story. I work here in Washington on a daily basis. I have numerous meetings with offices and have developed those relationships with the office. And I can honestly tell you in the many years that I've been doing this work, I could go into an office where I have a really good friend who works in there, and I would go talk to them about, supporting a priority or an issue. And, they'll tell me, of course, that's critically important and I understand it. But the one thing they always ask for is there a constituent from our district that we can hear from who wants us to do this? So we thank you all very much for being willing to share your story and to use your voice, because that is what's most important. Now, how to contact Congress. Before you contact your senators and representative next week, we ask that you go to as all of our preparation materials. It has background information, different issue briefs on why we're advocating for our two specific, the National Commission and the Peer Review Medical Research Program next week. It gives key talking points as well as email and a phone script that we ask you to follow. It has all of the technical and policy information included already. The one thing that we ask everybody to do is to, again, just share your story, because that's what you're the expert in. And that does give me a great opportunity to say that we are recording today's webinar. So if there is anything that I have gone over that you may have missed, or if I was muffled at any point, everybody will have an opportunity to rewatch the webinar and catch all of the information that you might have missed or that I might have quickly gone over. So again, we're going to ask everybody to visit the website, which has all of our preparation materials. We're going to ask you to call your representative's district office, their local office where you are. And the reason why we're asking you to call their local office is because with everything going on with the COVID-19 pandemic here in Washington, each office has a different policy as to whether their staffers are physically here in the office or if they are working from home. So the best way to get in touch with your members is to connect with their local office wherever you are. We're going to ask that when you call the local office, you also ask for the name and email address of the staffer who works here in Washington, D.C. That way you'll be able to follow up with the staffer you spoke with via email, and also include the DC staffer. And that develops a relationship where you can continue to stay in touch and send them updates on a number of our priorities and really continue to develop those key relationships. To find your U.S. senators, it's very simple. First, you go to www.senate.gov. There will be a search function to find your senators. You go to the pull down menu and it will have the senators listed. Find what state you live in and it will give you a link to both of your senators' websites. Once you're on their website, they have their contact information, links to online contact forms, and where their offices are located. Because Senate offices normally have more than one site, I encourage you to find the local office that is closest to you. So if you live in New York and you live on Long Island and you're looking to contact Senator Schumer or Senator Gillibrand's office, you would look for the Melville location, not the Buffalo one, because those are two different areas of the state. Or if you're in California and you're looking for Senator Harris or Senator Feinstein, you would look to, if you live in the San Francisco area, you would look for that phone number, not the one in Los Angeles. And we encourage you to follow your senators on Twitter and Facebook. It is an election year, so there is a lot that they're going to be posting on the work that they're doing, different virtual events, different virtual town halls or conference calls or different opportunities for them to engage with their constituents. And we want you to make sure that you're able to follow that and know where you can go to interact with them. Now for your House of Representative member, it's a similar way you find your senators. You're going to go to www.house.gov. And what's different, because you have to find a specific representative by your zip code, you're going to go in and type in your zip code at the top of the screen. It's going to bring you to a results page, which will have a picture of your member of the House. Depending on where you live, you may have to put your full address in, and that's just because there are a few congressional House office districts that cut into the same zip code. So you might be on one side of town and have me as your congressman, but you might be and then you might have a friend who lives a few blocks away and they're in Bill's district. So for the House, you have to put in your full address, so that way you get the correct member who represents you. And then we ask you to go to their website, where you'll find contact forms, locations of local offices, phone numbers to contact them. And again, we ask you to follow them on Twitter and Facebook if you can, so that way you can keep in the loop of everything that they are working on. Now, the next question that a lot of folks may be having is, how do you prepare? First, briefly read the prep materials that are posted on our website. Make note of any questions you have for the staffer you may be speaking with. Prepare your personal story. Again, how has your life changed? What is your experience? What do you want the staffers to know? Write your story down. It's very hard sometimes to think about everything that you have experienced and try to bring that down to what are some key points I want to make for my representative or senator to know. Writing your story down helps. Keep it to about 3 or 4 minutes if you can. You can practice by saying it out loud. And by doing that, we have seen that it helps manage nerves and time pressures that folks may have, especially if they've never participated in advocacy before. We again provide you with a call and email script in the prep packet, so you won't have to worry about memorizing any of the key things that we're going to be discussing. You are the expert in your story, and we ask you to be able to really focus on that. Following your contact with Congress, we're going to ask you to provide some key feedback. How did your conversations go? Did the staff ask you any questions? What do we have to follow up on? Who did you speak with specifically? Who did you email? Did you receive a reply? All of this is very critical for me here in Washington, because then I can know if somebody spoke with a senator from Utah or Wisconsin and their staff was very eager to be helpful on advancing a number of our priorities, that now gives me the opportunity to reach out to their office here and follow up. We ask all of you to send your follow-up notes to our advocacy email address, which is advocate@lymphaticnetwork.org. Again, please share as much of the information as you can. It is very helpful for us to know how successful you were, if there's anything we need to follow up on, or what other questions may need answering. So quickly, going to do a brief Washington update. We are in the second session of the 116th Congress. This Congress will end at the end of this calendar year. A new Congress will be sworn in January 3rd of 2021. We are still in the midst of annual budget and appropriations activity, which is very timely for what we're going to be discussing. And there's also a continued congressional focus on healthcare policy, including medical research, which is very crucial to us. So just to quickly go over legislative and policy priorities, we do have a broad legislative agenda that we advocate for. It includes the LTA and funding for a CDC awareness program. But what we want to focus on today and next week are two key agenda items that we need all of you to help us with. The first is the creation of a National Commission on Lymphatic Diseases, and the second is to include lymphatic diseases as a category eligible for study in the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed medical research program. So first, the National Commission on Lymphatic Diseases. As Bill briefly mentioned in his opening, NIH does support research across a number of institutes, but the issue is without meaningful financial support, the development of key treatments are often delayed, and there is a lot of work that still needs to be done that is currently not being done. And I will say that we have had a positive response to the creation of the National Commission from key members of Congress. As Bill mentioned, we've had meaningful meetings with Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, who is the chairwoman of the subcommittee that funds NIH. She has been very active on engaging with NIH leadership. We also have support from Congressman Tom Cole, who is the ranking member, the lead Republican on that subcommittee, as well as Congressman Ted Lieu out from California. And earlier this year, we had a very good conversation with Senator Roy Blunt from Missouri, who is the chair of the Senate subcommittee, which oversees the NIH budget. And what we're asking all of Congress to do is to support the establishment of the National Commission on Lymphatic Disease Research. And it's through examining the portfolio and making recommendations on how best to advance emerging scientific research through NIH's current structure that will continue to make key improvements and key developments on new research and new understandings. We did, in the House Appropriations bill, have strong language on the commission and a specific request for feedback from NIH about the status of the commission. But again, we are not done yet with the appropriations process. The House has passed their appropriations bills, but the Senate has yet to act, and the President has yet to sign any final bill. So where we are now is it has been included on the House side, but we still are waiting to hear from the Senate and their appropriation bills about what they're going to support inclusion of, and then they'll work to provide a final bill probably sometime later this year. So it's still very timely that we reach out, we educate Congress, and we ask them to support the creation of this critical commission. Our final area that we are going to be focusing on is inclusion of lymphatic diseases in the Department of Defense peer-reviewed medical research program. I know that many folks will scratch their head and say, you know, what does the Department of Defense have to do with research? This program was created many years ago with just initially 20 conditions and about $20 million worth of funding. And the list was of conditions that had a disproportionate effect on active military servicemen and servicewomen. So in order to be included in that list, you have to have justification, and you have to have the Senate approve it and place you on that list of eligible conditions. So from a few conditions a few years ago with $20 million, the program is now funded at $360 million with about 40 conditions that are deemed eligible for study. We're asking Congress to support the inclusion of lymphatic diseases in this peer-reviewed medical research program, so that way our researchers can actively compete for funding for grants that will further our understanding and provide even more research into lymphatic diseases. We're also asking for Congress to maintain funding of at least $360 million moving forward, and we ask them to continue to support this important and critical program. I know that was a lot, but with that, I'll stop there. That is the end of my formal presentation, but happy to answer any questions that folks may have. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these questions that are here. I see in the Q&A we have two questions, but they were answered. Yes, the slides will be, everybody will have access to them, and we do want to have increased research for lymphedema research. So yes, our end goal is to have more support for new and emerging research in this area. Next question is, I know it is frustrating if you have been on the Hill for many years and you have actively participated in our advocacy efforts, and it may seem like we are still fighting for the same things, but we have made some meaningful improvement and meaningful advancement. Over the past few months, we've been working very hard in engaging with key members of Congress. We had a conversation with Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. We had a conversation with Congressman Tom Cole and with Senator Roy Blunt from Missouri. On our discussion with Senator Blunt, he took about 40 minutes to really engage with us and take time to hear more about our priorities and what our requests were, and was very receptive to what we were asking for. Congresswoman DeLauro has really been a great champion for us. We had a very positive conversation with her ahead of the House advancing their appropriation bills, and she's been very active on ensuring that the commission does happen. I don't know if folks have seen, but earlier this year during a hearing on the Hill, Chairwoman DeLauro asked the leadership of NIH specifically about our National Commission and the status of it. And when she received what she deemed, and I think what many of us would as well, a very evasive non-answer, she made sure to circle back and say, no, this is something that I want to get done and I'm going to be following up on. And their office has been very helpful with us, and Congressman Tom Cole's office as well. He indicated personally that, he enjoys working with Congresswoman DeLauro, and anything they could do for our community in establishing this commission, they're going to do. To the second part of your question about COVID, yes, it is a crazy time with everything going on, but the staff still are very active and receptive to hearing from their constituents. As I mentioned, we had meaningful calls with members themselves over the past few months while they've been working on other items. So even though folks may not physically be in their offices, they still are acting or still are working very hard to hear from their constituents and advance key priorities. So we have found that even during this time, offices like to hear from their constituents, want to do what they can to be receptive. So it's still very timely because the appropriation bills have not been finalized yet.
Hey, Phil, if you don't
Yes.
mind, I'm going to jump in for a second there just to answer. Really looking back, let's look at it this way. Actually, Lauren has had 2 loppy days in Washington over 2 years. And it was only last year was the first time that we actually brought up the Lymphatic Commission when Kathy Bates actually gave testimony for us on Capitol Hill. So if I look at from the beginning of the history of the universe until now, nobody's paid any attention to this. And it's been 1 year since we've been promoting a national commission. And now we actually have language in the appropriations bill that says that the NIH is to give testimony back to the committee within 90 days of the passage of the bill if we get this through. That's rather phenomenal progress in a very short period of time. So whatever other issues you were supporting on Capitol Hill, this one's been around for 1 year, and we've made very dramatic progress in it as a result. And I guess one has to ask themselves, what's the other alternative? Give up, go home, deal with your disease, and not do anything about it. And we totally don't accept that. So there's only one answer here. You keep fighting. And that's what we're doing. And we're making great progress. And really, the community really needs to congratulate itself, as does all the people connected with LE&RN in fighting for this change that's in the process of occurring. So don't give up that, for a second. I don't want to hear any discouraging words. This is a win. If you don't recognize the win, then you're looking in the wrong direction. This is an incredible win, and every one of you needs to be out there, not only yourselves making these calls and emails next week, but absolutely everyone that you know, friend, foe alike, family member, etc. Get them to jump in there and have their voice heard, because that's how change is going to actually occur. So thanks. Phil, back over to you.
So going through some more of the Q&As, Jennifer, thank you for speaking with Senator McSally. If they're, I would say, definitely reconnecting with her office, connecting with Senator Sinema's office, and with your local House member in Arizona. Again, the more folks we have who are, speaking with their colleagues and making a case for continuing to support our priorities, the better off we'll be. I don't want us to rest on our laurels. We have had good success so far this year, but there's a long way for us to go, and I want us to still move forward. And the more that we have folks who in Congress are saying, I want to support this, I want to be helpful, what can I do? And the more we have them connecting and engaging and speaking with their colleagues, the higher priority we become and the more we're able to get from Congress. Okay, so the next question is, if you know someone in the local media that can be helpful or just cold call the member of Congress, I would say that, if you have somebody who who wants to be helpful and share their story, if they know somebody that they can help get you in contact with, that's very helpful. As Bill mentioned, each congressional office will receive, by time next Monday comes, will have received an American tragedy, so they will have some background information. That's why we're asking folks to, when you call your local office, to also get the information for the DC staffer. The local office might not have seen it by time next week comes around, but the DC staffer will have received it. So by asking for the contact information for the DC staffer, you can then connect with them, and then in their head it connects the dots. But anybody who who you think would be helpful or who wants to share and lend their voice and help the community, they are absolutely more than welcome to. Okay, question on, is there a role for showing images of lymphedema, even our personal problems, as part of our story? Yes, it's always up to the comfort of the individual on what you want how you want to share your story. You can share a photo with them as a follow-up, or you can share it. I would use a script to begin, and then as part of a follow-up, I would say, and I want to share some more of my story, and here is some of what it is, because I have seen that sometimes the congressional offices limit the size of email, so I want to make sure that your message goes through. But I do believe that, in follow-up or in continuing conversation, sharing images is powerful, because for staffers, for members, for really anybody, having that visual sometimes is what really drives it home. And, part of the reason why we are asking all of you to contact your legislators is, I could go into every office again and give specific facts and figures and descriptions, but what really makes a difference is what your experience has been. So yes, I would say there is a role, but I would save that for follow-up conversation down the road. Okay. Next question is, what effect do doctors, therapists, etc. have on moving things forward? Again, they are important stakeholders to lend their voices as well. I think what is most helpful is having that patient perspective, because you are living with this and what your experiences have been. It's very effective to have a doctor's perspective or a medical professional's perspective. It is also very helpful to have a caregiver's perspective, because it gives a staffer the full spectrum in understanding how it affects not only the individual patient, but how do doctors treat these patients, what resources are available for them. For a caregiver, what obstacles have you encountered? What do you view things from close to the situation, but not as somebody with, not as a patient, but as a caregiver. So, everybody has a role in moving things forward. And if there are, doctors or medical professionals or anybody else who wants to get involved and share that, that's helpful as well. Next question is there live contact we can access if we have questions as we start this process? I would refer folks to that advocate@lymphaticnetwork.org email address if you have any follow-up questions from today, or if as you're going through next week something comes up and you have a question or an issue or need assistance with anything, we'll be monitoring that email address. So if you send us a note there, we'll be able to get the information to you and help you out. Okay, last question I have here is, what if we have a senator that we have reached out to for many years and don't even get a response? What are the suggestions for something as frustrating as that? That is very frustrating, but I will say that sometimes that happens even with the most friendly of offices. I have experienced where I've known somebody really well. I've known a member, and trying to get in touch with their office has taken a few emails to get through to them. For you, I will say that your senator is running for re-election this year, and is probably one of the most vulnerable senators in the country. So their office might be a little more constituent focused during these last few months ahead of the election. But I would say, continue to, contact them, engage with them, contact the local office, the DC office, and also follow that race. Follow what he's doing, and follow what their opponent is doing. And, one of them is going to be your senator come January. So that's why we encourage folks to follow Twitter, Facebook, social media, so you could see where they are, if there are local events, if you can get to a town hall event, a virtual town hall event, and, ask them a question, or if there's the availability that they are seeking input from constituents, you can do that. And, with the other, individual who's running as well, if they have virtual events or different things, educating them as well. Because again, one of them is going to be your senator come January. So I know that it is frustrating, but, it's something that you have to keep moving forward and keep fighting for. And, I know that Bill is always passionate about advancing our priorities, no matter what the response is. And even sometimes when we get no response, we keep moving forward. But, we are very appreciative for you contacting offices and educating them. Next question is, other than our own reps, should we be contacting any other key members? The difficulty in that is when you call a congressional office, the first thing they ask you for is where you're calling from and your zip code. And I will tell you this as a former staff member, if you call from a zip code that's not in the district, you'll have somebody politely listen to you, but they're not going to take down your information and move forward with it. If you give them a zip code from their district, they will absolutely take down your contact information and hear you out and move that message forward. So it's on the national level, we connect with key members, but for the National Action Week next week, we're asking you to just contact your own representative. Excuse me. Next question is, what about sending short videos? So they will have already received the video from the American tragedy. Same thing with the pictures. I wouldn't send the video in your initial email, because sometimes that limits the staffer's availability in receiving it if the message gets too big. But I would use videos, any media, as a follow-up and say, thank you again for taking the time to speak with me. I want to share the short video that shares a little bit more about my story, or I want to share the following photos that are part of my story and my journey that, we would like for you to see as well. Question is, are you suggesting asking specifically about these two topics at a town hall? I would say, if you are able to attend a town hall, you can use a script that we provided, tailor it to a town hall, and raise these issues with members of Congress who are running. If it's for somebody who's not an elected member and they're running for a seat and you attend one of their town halls, I would educate them about our community, and then I would, tell them two things we're specifically currently working on is a national commission and inclusion of lymphatic diseases in the peer review medical research program. With politics and people running, it's never outside the realm of possibilities that somebody at a town hall would then go to somebody they know and say, I had this town hall and this is some of the information I heard, and they want to do more education on it, or they want to get more involved with it, or they share it with somebody who already is in Congress. So I would focus on these two requests if you attend a town hall with a current member of Congress, to, again, reinforce the point home to them, and then following up with anybody else after that. Question is thoughts about how to connect with people answering the phone. How do we get to speak with the congressperson or senators? I will say it's very unlikely that you'll catch a member themselves, but that's okay, because staffers are the ones who do most of the work and are real experts in the field and the issues that they work on and cover. The best way is to, and the phone script lays it out, when you have the question, when you call and they pick up, you say, hi, I'm Phil. I'm an advocate with the Lymphatic Education and Research Network, and I just want to speak with the person who handles health for your office about some key issues. Then they'll connect you with that person, or they might say that person is away, but I can take a message for you, or I can pass along some information, and then you would share that with them, and then ask for an email address, and then you can follow up via email. Okay, Bill, I don't see anything in the Q&A or the chat, so I'll turn it over, I guess, back to you to wrap it up for us. But I, again, want to thank everybody for participating in our National Action Week. It is very meaningful and powerful that you will be sharing your stories and connecting with your legislators. Feel free to contact us with any questions. And thank you all for your time today. Bill, over to you.
Hey, Phil, I just want to say thanks, Phil. That was absolutely great. And thanks all of you for tuning in today. Don't miss the fact that we are at an incredibly momentous time. We just announced centers of excellence around the world. We've announced 12 of them already. There will be more than a dozen that are announced in this next month at the beginning of September as well. And the whole idea of getting a national commission, one of the things, just to say, to put it in perspective, the team that Phil is with, the Health and Medicine Council of Washington, D.C., worked with the sleep group out of Stanford back in the 1990s. They were in the same situation that we are, and that is that they just weren't getting the kind of attention they needed. They had little bitty grants all over the institutes of NIH, but no coordinating point. This is the group that actually worked to get a National Commission on Sleep. It led to and centered on sleep, which is housed at the National Heart, Lung, Lung Institute. And within the course of a few years, their budget went from about $5 to $10 million that was being spent on sleep research to about $127 million that was spent on sleep research. We are taking the exact same tack. So please get out there and support this and realize just how far we've come as a group together, because we really believe in what it is that we are doing. So stay optimistic. We are going to conquer this. We are just at the beginning, only doing this for a year at this point to really push this forward. Miraculous speed. And Phil, I really want to thank you. And Dale, you guys have been absolutely incredible at moving this forward. And with that, I'll just thank everyone again for participating in this, and I'll look forward to next week. Excellent. I think that does it for us. Steve, if you're with us, if there's anything else you feel needs to be said, otherwise we will just close out at this point. Thanks all.